Next week's spring break. Not officially for grad programs, but I won't be here. So you guys can come to class if you want, but I'm going to be someplace warm. So officially we'll have our midterm exam next week. But what I'll do is I'll put it up sometime before the end of this week, and you just have to get it submitted before the next Tuesday we meet. So you got 2 weeks to take it, but it'll probably be like a 2-hour timed. I'll probably write it for a 1-hour exam. There'll be 10 questions based on the stuff we've done up to this point. It'll be on Blackboard, so you'll have 2 hours to take it, let's say. Should take an hour. Maybe I might even just say 3 hours. I don't want it to be a time crunch issue, but I also don't want to give you so much time that you can like bring in reinforcements to like write stuff. So somewhere in the middle there. But yeah, I'll try to get it up before Friday. In fact, I might even try to get it up tomorrow morning. And then it's just due by 2 weeks from today, next time we meet. Yeah.
Are we able to take it as teams equal? Or are you
Teams?
going to take it individually?
People take it. I mean, I want you to take the test as individuals.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, because I want to see, like what you're learning from the stuff we're doing here. But if you need to Google something quickly or look at your notes, that's fine. Yeah. So I mean, I want you to be able to use resources, but I don't want to give you so much time that effectively what you're doing is turning in somebody else's exam.
Right.
So, use your own ethical judgment. If you don't understand what a question is asking and you happen to be in the room taking it with a friend or something, and you say, hey, do you know what he's asking in number 3? That's fine.
Oh,
But,
cool.
just don't
Yeah.
take their answer. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care. This is just going to help you learn the stuff. I mean, whether you get an A or a D in my class, it makes zero difference to me. It's your life. So,
We typically want to do better on final anyways.
well, yeah, I do have that policy where if you do better on the final exam than you do in the midterm, I'll replace your midterm exam score with the final exam score. So I have that. So there's no risk in this first one. It kind of tells you, do you suck or not? And if you do suck, then you know what you need to get better at. All right, so nothing is unrecoverable from the first exam. All right. So let's see. What was the homework? Isn't that what hard hats are for, right?
Yeah.
They're hard.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I guess that wouldn't be a good thing if it just broke.
That would be hilarious. Well, now I found out that I can get such a better one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, white. Did you find one?
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell me. I want to be surprised. I'd be surprised. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so good. I'm so excited. What was it doing? Homework. All right. So,
I'm like already stressed.
you're what? About what?
You. I've just been really stressed the last week.
Well, shouldn't I make it better? Isn't like comic relief?
Yeah, that's why I wish I could stay for the entire.
No, you don't, because the last part of class, when I introduce what we're going to do for the assignment, that's going to just stress you to.
I know you won't see me at home.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous.
Right. Right.
I just
Get me by.
I just came up with it on the way over here, and it is. I don't know how I'm going to solve it. So you guys are. Yeah, it's one of those. It's like one of those problems where like, hey, it would be cool if this was solved. And I thought about like, how would I solve it? I said, oh, I don't know. Let's just give it to the class as homework. Okay. So let me see. You said I have it partially done for credit card. Let me just run this real quick. So I have it taking you to a page for when you hit one of the clicky things. It takes you to credit card, fills in the form, and then I have a button for edit and delete. Did I make delete work?
Yeah.
All right. So I gave you delete. Oh, do I have a guy open? Haha. All right, so here's my credit cards. I click on one of these. It goes in here. I hit delete. That guy's now gone. If I add a new credit card, now it's back and I should be able to delete it. Okay, so now the idea here is I should be able to come in here and I should be able to change this to some value and then hit update, right? Okay, so let's go. That is, what did I call it? Edit credit card activity, this guy right here. So on update button, I went ahead. Oh my gosh, I did like almost all of this. I did like almost all of it for you, didn't I? So this is core dot current selected card dot name is equal to credit card name. Core dot current selected card dot what is it called? Start date. Start date is equal to credit card start date. Core dot current selected card dot min spend is equal to credit card min spend. Core dot current selected card dot what is it? Bonus points? Point bonus is equal to credit card bonus points. Core dot current selected card dot save. That's it, isn't it?
So is there a benefit from actually updating the record versus just dumping the record and creating a new one?
I didn't dump the record and create a new one.
That's his question.
No, that's my question. Is there a benefit from doing an actual just updating the record there versus just deleting the credit?
Well, this is certainly more convenient. I mean, we're updating the fields of the current record, and then we're just telling that dude to save himself, so he's saving himself in place in Firebase, right? Because he knows exactly where he lives in Firebase. That's right here. So when we set the key for a guy, he knew his exact location in the database. It is under credit cards at the key. So now we can just tell him to save himself, and all he does is sets the value at that position to whatever he is. So it just overwrites everything that's currently there. So pretty easy. What you would have to do if you created a brand new one is you'd have to delete the old one, then add the new one. So you probably run it as a delete first. So it's just gone from the database, including gone from your linked list. Create a brand new object, then save it to the Firebase, which then updates your linked list. It's fine as the final same result, but there's more moving parts to break. Let's see, and then realistically, if we want to, actually, we don't need to do that because when we change the value there inside, I do it in core, I do it inside of main activity for mine. Where's my listener? In main activity. So here inside of main activity, when our credit card value changes, I go ahead and update everything, and then so realistically, I should probably inside here say core dot, what is it, credit card adapter. Where's my adapter? What's my adapter's name? My super secret adapter. Yeah, core dot CC custom adapter, this dude. Yeah, what I'm actually going to do just to, well, here, let me just use this guy here real quick. So I'll notify that the data set was changed. That way the list view will update. Similarly, I'll do the same thing up here. So core dot, let's see, LP dot custom adapter dot notify data set changed. So anytime that we get an update from the database that something has changed, we will do any of the update stuff we're supposed to do, and then we'll go ahead and notify our adapter to update himself. It will actually update on its own on a sequence, like it happens on a timer, but this forces it. Now the other thing I will do, just for the sake of maybe saving us from some race condition issues, is I'm going to grab all of this stuff, all the stuff before those asynchronous listeners, and I'm going to bring it before I set up those value event listeners. Probably wouldn't make a difference, but the reason I'm doing that is there is a possibility between when you first say, I'm going to set the a value event listener for this loyalty program ref, there's a possibility that this code could fire before we've actually set those values. Really unlikely, because computers are really fast. Okay, but technically I am listening for changes to the database, and remember initially I get an initial dump from the database, where the database says, here's the current state of the database. It is possible that it will give me the current state of the database before I've created my custom adapter, before I've grabbed the list view for my credit cards, that stuff. Really unlikely. In fact, you probably could never make it happen. I'm just saying it technically would be possible, so I'll go ahead and make sure all those values are set up first, and then I'll go ahead and start asynchronously listening for database changes. Okay, so this guy should be our update for credit cards, right? All right, so I'll click on this credit card and we'll change this guy to a bunch of 5s. I'll hit update. All right, so I didn't say finish, so that's why I didn't kick it away. But if I go ahead and go back here, we see it is updated here. So I just need to throw in a finish. Where is it? Edit credit card activity. This dot finish. So that's it for the credit card side of things. All right, then loyalty program is the same thing. So let's write that real quick. All right, so what did I call this guy? Edit credit card activity. And I also need I didn't create that program for it yet, the loyalty program version of that. All right, so a couple things I noticed from some questions from people this week as you're trying to kind of piece together your applications based on my application. If you don't actually go through the process of right-clicking, saying new activity, then choosing, I usually have an empty activity. If you don't go through this process, and we're going to call this guy, what? Edit loyalty program activity. If you don't go through the process of actually using the wizard for creating this activity, what does not happen, just minimize this here. Let me go to my manifests. Here's my edit loyalty program activity. That dude was just automatically added for me. If you bring in some of my code without going through the process of actually creating that activity, you will not get this line inside of your Android manifest. And what that means is intents can't get there, because intents look in here for the class name of the dude you're trying to launch. All right, so I had at least 2 people who had that issue. So it's fine if you bring in code from an external source, not the end of the world, but you will need to go into your Android manifest and you'll have to like copy this line, paste it above or paste it below, whatever, and make sure you change the name to the actual name of the class you put into your code. You'll have to manually add it here. That make sense? Otherwise, you cannot get there with those intents. This is one of those magical things that happens for you behind the scenes. You'll probably very rarely have to deal with the manifest. Generally speaking, there's actually some security stuff and things like that you can put in here. But generally speaking, you won't have to mess with the manifest very often. It's managed for you by Android Studio as long as you do all the stuff inside of Android Studio yourself.
It threw a pretty clear error at me today. It was like, hey, you need to like reference this activity in the manifest.
Right, but if you didn't even know what the manifest was, that's going to be a pretty heavy curveball, right? Like manifest, huh?
Mr. Google was with me,
Yeah.
so it was okay.
back in the early days, I think I've referenced before that Android, Android Studio hasn't been around for as long as Android has been. So in the early days of writing Android applications, you would actually use Eclipse with a Android plugin. And that was a pretty horrible experience, but for graphical user interface creation and stuff like that. But the important aspect of that is back then we had to do all the manifest stuff manually. So, you got pretty used to working with manifests back then. But now we're kind of pampered. Everything happens magically for us, and that's great until it didn't happen magically for you because you didn't go through the right process of creating your activity. Okay? So I have this dude, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little stealing. So I'll go into my resource here. I'll go into layout. I'm going to go into my add loyalty program. I'm going to steal that text from there. I'll just grab his linear layout. And here's my edit loyalty program. I'll go into that text. I'll paste that stuff in there. So now I have those dudes. Those are the pieces of information I want to fill in, right? Okay. And that's called loyalty name ET, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So now we go back to main activity. Just like we set the on-click listener for our credit card dealy flippy thingy-majiggy, we're going to go ahead and do something very similar for our loyalty program. So we'll say this dot where's my loyalty programs? This dot loyalty program LV dot set clickable to true. So now that dude is clickable. We'll then say this dot loyalty program LV dot set on item click listener. We're going to go ahead and get a loyalty program from this guy. And we're going to grab this from core dot the loyalty program LL, get at index, blah, blah, blah. Let me hide this guy. Then we're going to create an intent, except we're going to edit loyalty program class. And we're going to set core. So in our singleton, we're going to keep track of the current selected loyalty program. So here's core. I'll create a public static loyalty program current selected loyalty program. Start that guy off as null. Like that. So then back here in main activity, I can then say the dude you just set is the current selected loyalty program. This is my selected loyalty program. And then I will start my activity. Now, why did we have to have this thing here called my context? Why couldn't we say this here? Remind me.
It's inside the new instance of the on-item click listener, so the context doesn't belong to main activity anymore.
It's not calling the this with the.
Okay, so this is an instance of on-click listener, right? All right, so I needed to give myself a more local variable. All variables resolve to their most local instance or most local definition. So I really wanted the this outside of this scope, which I saved up here as my context. That's a pretty important trick. So does anybody not understand what I had to do, what's happening there?
I don't know if I fully grasp it yet. I mean, I was watching and I threw it in mine. video. Like,
Okay.
I get that like the scope, we've left the main activity context or the instance of that, and now we're in the instance.
So what I really want to do, let's just stick with my loyalty program stuff up here that I'm working on. What I really want to do, what I traditionally would do, is I would say this dot start activity. Okay? And it's screaming at me and say, hey, I'm cool with this. This is a local variable. It just happens to be an instance of on item click listener. That's what he is. This is an instance of on item click listener. And on item click listeners do not have instance methods called start activity. That doesn't exist for on item click listeners. That's an instance method that belongs to activities. All right, so what I really want to say here is I want to say current activity Are you less stressed now? Doesn't that make you less stressed? I really want to say current activity dot start activity. That's the dude I want to talk about, right? So if that would really make you feel better, we can come up here, because maybe saying my context is a little bit, you know, that's kind of, I don't know, context is kind of weird, right? It's like so we'll just give ourselves an extra variable. So we'll have a, you know, my current activity. And then we'll say this dot my current activity is equal to this. So effectively, this guy is a synonym for this guy.
Is it a pointer?
Well, they're both variables that hold memory addresses, so therefore this variable is a pointer, this variable is a pointer. They happen to both hold a memory address, and they both happen to point to the same place in memory, which is the instance of main activity. Okay, so if I really wanted to, I can get rid of this my context thing and say, oh, that's a scary variable name. So we can dump it from here. So really the name of our variable is my current activity. Something like that. So then when I create my intent, I'll create it in terms of my current activity. I'll create this in terms of my current activity. I'll create this in terms of my current activity. Create this in terms of my current activity. And this all has to do with variable scoping rules. If I am inside of this code right here, I am inside of a context that is an instance of on item click listener. Therefore, this keyword, the dude we would traditionally use, let's get down here to, so this guy right here, when we had our on add loyalty program button pressed, we would traditionally use this dot start activity to get that guy launched. Because in this context, this is an instance of main activity. But up here, if I'm in this code right here, this is an instance of on item click listener. That's the kind of animal that variable named this is right here. So if I need to have access to an instance of main activity, I need to have some way of escaping this scope right here. That means I need a variable that was not locally defined in the scope. So it can't be called adapter view. It can't be called view. What did I do? Did I do something bad? Okay, we're good. It can't be called adapter view. It can't be called view. It can't be called position. It can't be called row ID. It also can't be called this, because this variable is automatically created by any of our modern programming languages, but specifically Java, when an instance of a variable is created. So I have a magical variable in here called this that was generated for me as a pointer to this particular instance of on item click listener. And that local variable this shadows the more global variable this that I really want. I need to get access to my instance of main activity. The this keyword is how an instance refers to itself from within itself. If I'm inside of main activity, like I am right here, this guy, this function is just a function that lives right inside of main activity. When I say this, I'm talking about this particular instance of main activity. Therefore, that guy is main activity, and he has a start activity function. But if I'm up here, and I try to say this dot here, at this point, I am inside of an on-item click listener. The this keyword is generated for me, and its value is a pointer to this particular instance of on-item click listener. This is how an object refers to itself from within itself. If I was inside of credit card and I say this dot min spend, I'm talking about this particular instance of credit card, his specific min spend variable. So the this keyword is how an object refers to itself from within itself. We have to decide, what does our local version of this actually point to? In this case, local version of this points to an instance of credit card. Out here, the this keyword down here points to an instance of main activity. If I'm inside of my instance of on-item click listener, the this keyword is an instance of on-item click listener. But if I'm starting activities, I need an instance of an activity. Specifically, I want an instance of main activity. And I gave myself one called my current activity. I just had to give it a variable name that was not found locally. Therefore, when I went to resolve it, because all variables resolve to their most local definition, it will look around in here and say, do I have a variable called my current activity? No, I don't. So I'm going to jump outside of that scope to the next scope up, which is actually the scope of onCreate. We also don't have that variable in there. Next scope up will be the global scope of main activity, where we do.
If you gave it the namespace of another class or another package, could it resolve to that?
Well, yes. So for instance, you could use core dot, for instance. C# introduced namespaces post Java. Java doesn't support namespaces. Java supports something called packages, which sort of kind of will work that way, but you'd have to make it a static variable to pull it off with Java. Like our singleton.
Okay,
Yep.
I was curious. So like you couldn't have like an instance of some class out there that was like not static and have it point to like the.
Well, you could. You could just have your singleton and just say, core dot main, my main activity is equal to this right here at the beginning of it. So anytime you need that guy, you just say core dot my main activity. And you go to town, you're fine, right? So, but it ultimately comes down to scoping rules. All right, so this guy should get me to that screen now, right? So I set that on-item click listener for my loyalty program, and at this point, that screen just has like kind of a blank, doesn't really do anything. So where's that guy? Edit loyalty program. So I have a submit button up here, but I'm gonna swap out that submit button for what I do. We'll do two. I did a horizontal linear layout in the other one with 2 buttons in it. So we will do that. Where's my horizontal linear layout? And there's my button. There's another button. And we'll make this linear layout height to wrap content. On our first button, we'll say update. And our second button will say delete. Like that. All right, so we want this guy to go ahead and get filled in, but let's just make sure we can get to the screen first, okay? Baby steps. So at this point, if I were to click on one of my loyalty programs inside of main activity, what happens? I go ahead and find the loyalty program they selected. I create my intent. I go ahead and save that loyalty program inside of core for when we do need it. We'll need it in a minute. And then I go ahead and start that next activity. So this should get us to that screen for editing our loyalty program, but nothing is filled in yet. It is a pretty solid Coke Zero there, Annie. Yeah, no extra points there, but you know, it's a thing. All right, so I'll click on this guy. He takes me to my edit loyalty program, dealy flippy, whatever. Okay, so far so good. All right, so now I need to give myself access to these edit text dealio things here so that I can set those values. So that is inside of this guy right here. And I will go ahead and give myself 3 edit texts. And what are they called? Name, bank, points. Actually, let's call them the same as they are in there. So that's loyalty name ET, loyalty bank name ET, loyalty cur points ET. Okay. Loyalty bank name ET and loyalty current points ET. And then inside here, we'll say this dot loyalty name ET is equal to this dot find view by ID r dot ID dot loyalty name ET. This dot loyalty bank name ET is equal to this dot find view by ID r dot ID dot loyalty bank name ET. This dot loyalty current points ET is equal to this dot find view by ID r dot ID dot loyalty current points ET. All right, so now I have access to those guys. Now I want to go ahead and fill those guys in with the current information. So I'll say this dot loyalty name ET dot set text equal to core dot current selected loyalty program dot name. This dot loyalty bank ET dot set text equal to core dot current selected loyalty program dot bank. This dot loyalty current points ET dot set text, and this was the issue you had, Jordan. So right here, so you had it set like this: core dot current selected loyalty program dot points or point balance, whatever. That guy's an int. Okay, so and notice though that it's not upset about it, which makes it even more weird. Okay, so let me just show you why. So if I say this dot loyalty, it doesn't matter which one I do, dot set text. See how there's multiple versions of set text? One of them takes in an integer which is looking for a unique identifier from one of our other resources. So it's actually looking probably for something like from our strings here inside of values, we have an array called a strings XML where you can put like app name in there. So if I say, I think it's r.values.app name, that would boil down to a unique integer that points to this particular string. So that's what was happening, and that's what makes it harder to debug, because this is not screaming at us about anything. I've given it a string. I've given it an int. It just happens to be an integer, it's not the unique number for any resource. That's why it was screaming at us. So I don't want to use the version that takes an int. Instead, I'll just create a little empty string and concatenate onto it. This makes it the string version of that number. So it'll set the text for loyalty current points ET to whatever the actual points were.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
In the example you wrote for credit cards, you cast all the edit text objects.
Yeah, and then it gives you the warning and says it's not needed. So you can, historically I like doing that.
Okay, so it wasn't necessary to do.
It's not necessary.
Okay.
It's an old habit because, like I said, I've been writing it since it first came out. You used to have to do it.
You want to investigate. Okay, so it's not. Is it already an edit text, or is it?
it will come out of here. So if I do this, so if I say this dot find view by ID, see how it comes out as a T, as a type? Historically, it came out as something called a view, a generic view. And that's why that's why you had to cast it back to what it actually was. Because anything you see on the screen is a view. An edit text is a view. A text view is a view. Yeah, they're all views, right? But this guy, the updated version of this more recently, it comes out as the actual type it is. So it'll come out as an edit text, it'll come out as a button, it'll come out as a whatever, based on the actual kind of value it is. Okay. So that's why if I put edit text in front of this guy, it tells me it's redundant.
Mine doesn't actually bark at me, it just lets it hang out there. I was just wondering, like, why do we do this? It works when you don't do it. Okay.
Yeah, so, well, right, but if you hover over this,
yeah, you're right, it does.
Yeah, it says this dot find view to edit text is redundant, blah, blah, blah. So it's not necessary, but it's not going to hurt anything. All right, so now I should have my stuff filled in based on my current loyalty program that I selected, right? Where's my loyalty program? These guys? All right, so it's all filled in. All right, so now we want delete to work. Okay, and what does delete do? Delete says we're going to remove from the our endpoint that value. If we go back and look at our edit credit card dealy flippy majiggy thing.
Yeah.
What's that call it? This guy here's on delete. So we go to that object. So this is a credit card, and we have a function in there called delete. What does that function do? Delete says we're going to go to our ref, and we're going to remove the value that lives at that ref. So we can just take this function from credit card, put it inside of loyalty program. Where's my loyalty program? Right there. Did I already give myself a delete in here? I already gave myself the save. All right, so this guy will remove the value at his reference, and his reference was set. Do we set the key? Yeah, his reference got set. When we set his key, we set the reference right here to the general pointer to all loyalty programs dot child, whatever his specific key was. That is the exact bucket he lives in inside of the loyalty program folder in the database. All right, so now we know how to delete that guy. So we'll go back into edit. I'm doing loyalty program, right? Why are these things so hard to find? Edit loyalty program activity. So I need to rate my couple of functions for update and delete. So public void on update button clicked. This guy will take in a view as a parameter, and I will say core.selected loyalty program.delete, and that will delete it. We're not asking for any sort of clarity. We're just gone. And then if we want to then finish, we can say this dot finish, and that'll take us back to the previous screen. We could also say this, our public void on, actually this should have been on delete button pressed if we're deleting. This is on update button. We'll just stay consistent at least within this one. On update button clicked. So now we're going to go ahead and grab the pieces of information that is currently entered into our three fields. We're not even checking to see if something's actually changed or not. We're just going to say we're just going to do it regardless. All right. We're also not error checking to make sure they put something in there. We're again assuming they put something in there. So I'll say core dot current selected loyalty program dot name is equal to this dot what's it called? Loyalty name et dot get text dot toString. Core dot current selected loyalty program dot bank is equal to this dot bank name et dot get text dot toString core dot current selected loyalty program dot point balance is equal to, now if I say this dot loyalty current points et dot toString, that's going to give me a string. I want to get that integer, so I'll say integer dot parse int of that string. Okay. So I'll set the 3 pieces of information for this particular loyalty program, the one I've currently I'm updating. Then I'll say core.current selected loyalty program dot save. Tell him to update himself. And he'll go right to the place that he is in memory, or is in the database at that exact key location, and just update his value to himself. So if you look at loyalty program here, and we look at save, what does save do? Save says I'm going to go to the reference that I set when I set my key. That is the reference where all loyalty programs are, but specifically at my container. So he knows exactly where he lives. And then he's saying, for save, I'm just going to overwrite my old value with me, my new value. And since this guy is serializable, he will go ahead and set the value there to his serialized version, which is the JSON value that he holds. And then where is Dearly Flippy? So edit loyalty program, this guy. So I'll tell him to save, and then I'll say this dot finish. Now, technically, after I've saved him, he may not, well, he should be fine, because when I save him here, that will change the database, right? And when I change the database, what will fire? My listener out here in main activity for loyalty programs, my value event listener. And what will that do? It's right now it's spitting out my snapshots. Then it's dumping my entire linked list. Then filling up my linked list with as many things as it finds. If it's the last thing I delete, it's not going to find anything in there. But then it's going to go ahead and let my custom adapter know that stuff has changed. Go ahead and reload yourself. So that should be it. All right, so here's our loyalty program. I'll go ahead and update this guy to, I don't know, we'll just put a bunch of numbers at the end of that. I'll click update. Oh, what didn't I do?
You linked them in your.
Yeah, wrote everything. Didn't actually set the on click for my buttons to these guys, right? So I need to go into here. I'll go click on update, go to his on click. And we're going to click on update guy there, and then delete. Is on click, is on delete. Now everybody's happy. Come back in here. All right, so I'll click on one of these guys. I'll just put some bunch of more numbers in there, hit update. Oh no, what did you do? Oh, I think I made an int too big for integer. Still user error. You know, I just added a whole bunch of numbers. It was bigger than an int can hold. So we won't change it quite that much this time. We'll put a 7 on the end of it. Oh, it looked like it was the problem. Current number of points. Number format exception. Yeah, it's this guy right here. Loyalty, current points, ET. Oh, dot get text. Dot toString. Because loyalty points ET is a pointer. It'll have an ID associated with it. That is a number. All right, so now this guy should be happy. So I'm saying get my loyalty points out of text, grab the text from there, convert it to a string, take that string and squeeze the integer out of it. All right, so there's that updated value there. I click it again, I hit delete. Now it's gone. I click this guy, update it. Whatever, update. Go back in here, hit delete. Now he's gone. Hit delete. Now he's gone. Hit whatever. Now I have an empty program. All right, so that was the homework assignment. Did I cover all the pieces? All right. So let me commit that. Well, before I commit it, any questions about any of that, how it worked? Easy peasy?
The only question I had is in the edit credit card,
Mm-hmm.
in the update section, why did you put all of the stuff to local variables and then save it?
Oh, I didn't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
That's
just
what I
being
figured
I was
out.
just being explicit.
Okay.
So he's asking, why did I go ahead and throw it in 4 variables here, where when I did the same effective code in edit credit cards or edit loyalty program, I just set them directly rather than put them in variables first. This is probably more correct to not put them in variables first, because I don't actually have to use them more than this one time here. So usually you would create a variable if you need to use the value more than one time. Here I don't. I'm using each of those values exactly one time. I'm saving, and I'm done.
Is this what we talked about earlier? Like you could pass it as a parameter on, say, loyalty or card, or like you could pass parameters for that, and then you could create just one line instead of those 3 lines.
Yeah, you could do that if you want to see what that would look like. We'll do it for loyalty program maybe. Loyalty program. All right, we'll have a second version of save. So this is actually a good example of polymorphism. More than one method with the same name but a different number and type of parameters. So we'll have one that's called save, and this guy will take in a, what are my 3 things? String name, string bank, int point balance. String name, string bank, int point balance. We'll say this dot name is equal to name. This dot bank is equal to bank. This dot point balance is equal to point balance. And then we'll say, well, then I could actually call the other version of this dot save if I really wanted to. So that's actually the nice fancy way. I could say this dot save, and that'll just call this line, or I can just put that line in there. But why repeat that line if saving is always the same? So this would probably be this dot save like that. And then with that one, so now I have 2 versions of save. One version, this guy presumes I've already updated all the values in him, and he'll just save it. This guy here says, give me your updated values. I'll go ahead and set them, then I'll save. So then to use that one, we'll go to our edit loyalty program deal here, and we will say core.current selected loyalty program dot save. So we have a second version of save here. I'm going to pass him these 3 values. There's the name. There's the bank. And here is the point balance. then you wouldn't need those things. So I'm saying, hey, current selected loyalty program, go ahead and save yourself. Here's your updated values right here. And when you're done, finish. That version of that guy will take, where's my loyalty program? He'll take in those 3 parameters. He'll set the local fields. Then he'll call his local function called save that takes no parameters, which is this guy right here, who just sets the reference to the current value. See how that works? I'll go ahead and test that real quick, but I'm pretty sure that works. So we'll go ahead and add a loyalty program. So there's my loyalty program. I'll go ahead and, was that on update, right? So I'm going to update this guy. So I'll just add some 5s here and I'll click update. So there's my updated version of it. Then I can go in here and delete and empty it out. All right, any other questions? So far, so good? All right, so let me commit this so you have this version of it. And then we will talk about what we're doing next, and we will then take a break and come and do it. So let me commit this. Updated for update/delete. Okay, so at this point, we can kind of fully manage at some sort of ghetto level credit cards and loyalty programs. Fair enough. So if we start thinking about what would be some other beneficial things dealing with traveling. So for instance, if I'm traveling out of Milwaukee, might I be interested in knowing all the airports that I can fly directly to from Milwaukee? I might want to know where I can fly direct, right? Might it also be interesting to know what locations I can fly directly to from any airport in the world? Sure. So if I want to have a list that shows me all the airports in the entire world, and I can click on any of those airports, Chicago O'Hare, Midway, Atlanta Airport, click on it, and then it shows me a list of all places that have direct flights, all places that that airport has direct flights to. And then I could click that airport, which would take me back in and show me all the places that that airport has direct flights to. So you can kind of build your, a lot of times you can get direct flights. Points for direct flights are less than points for, if I'm gonna spend a flight to go from here to Phoenix, Arizona, it would be less points to go from Chicago to Phoenix than from Milwaukee to Phoenix. I don't think there's a direct flight from Milwaukee to Phoenix. Let's just assume that's the case. So it would cost me less points to drive to Chicago and fly direct from Chicago to Phoenix than it would to fly from Milwaukee to Chicago than Chicago to Phoenix, or from Milwaukee to Denver, Denver to Phoenix, something like that. So 2 hops usually equals more points, is the idea. Not always, but a lot of times it might be nice to know where direct flights are. Maybe you're not even thinking what's the best for points. Maybe you're thinking what's going to be the best for time. Something like that. So it could be an important tool for the travel hacker to know where can I fly direct from different airports. Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay, so now how many airports are there in the world? A lot. Okay, how many is a lot? Take a guess? Yeah, let's Google it. What's our guess?
7.
What's a reasonable guess for a fully functional human?
Like legit airports? Or like even those really small ones?
17,678 commercial airports in the world.
I was gonna guess like 350.
Now, it's possible some of these are pretty small airports. Like, for instance, my parents live in Champaign, Illinois, where University of Illinois is, and their local airport's called Willard International, right?
That would be a commercial airport, though.
No, it would be. It's not a municipal airport. Yeah, it's Willard International. I mean, jets fly out of there. Jets do fly out of there, but it is not a.
Is this where you like went and then went into the grass afterwards?
No, but it is the one where I was on a propeller plane and the flight was delayed 3.5 hours because we couldn't get the door shut. And then we took off. We were flying from Willard to Chicago, and then actually, funny enough, Chicago to Phoenix. In this story,
Okay.
so the whatever hour-and-a-half flight from Willard to Chicago, we ran into storms, and that plane straight fell out of the sky. We dropped 10,000 plus feet instantly. My mom my mom and I, and then my dad and my brother were behind us, and we were a lot younger. This was propeller plane years. You know, you don't see a whole lot of propeller planes out there now, right? So my mom's sitting next to me. She stands up and breaks her seatbelt. You know, like the adrenaline rush. I mean, this plane fell out of the sky. And then the right propeller stopped turning. Okay, so we have no right propeller. But you got the other propeller, it's fine. They say, planes can fly on one engine. So you could hear the pilots trying to start the engine. Finally, that engine starts. It's like, left engine stops. Okay, all confidence is gone now. You have physically seen both engines not work. Okay, in like the last 5 minutes, and your plane just fell out of the sky not that long ago. They never got the left engine restarted, but the rest of the flight was fine. But I mean, people were puking and crying, stuff had fallen out of the overhead compartments, and that was awesome. Yeah, but that was actually, so I was pretty young. I don't remember how old. I wasn't like a 2-year-old or anything, but I was old enough to know what happened, but not old enough to be brave about it or something. So I'm thinking I was maybe 7. So from that point in time, I had a pretty severe fear of flying. They had to drug me to put me on planes. Where now I'm on the complete opposite side. The more turbulence, the better. If an engine catches fire, oh yeah. Strap in, tighten the seatbelt. Let's see how far this goes.
People die from plane crash. They'll just be like, "Well, we're glad that he was doing what he loved."
Well, but it is funny how it's so opposite now. I mean, they used to have to give me anti-anxiety pills to get me on a plane. Where now, I look forward to extremely heavy turbulence. It's entertaining for me to see the cabin stewards the flight attendants be nervous, when they go and strap in, and you hear them on the phone, they're talking to the pilot, everything okay up there? We just saw a wing rip off. Things are fine. You got half of the left wing, just trim this a little bit, we're fine, we can keep it. But my wife had never flown until we met, and so we've been together for years now, so she's flown many, many, many times now. But so she's thinking that she can look, and at that point I was an adult and had become this crazy person I am. So she thought that she could look to me for to see if things were okay, right? She didn't know what turbulence felt like, how bad it could be, So our very first flight, it was medium turbulence. It wasn't anything severe, but she was nervous, this is turbulence, what's happening? I'm like, oh, no big deal. And so nothing happened, but over multiple flights in the future, we had a couple, we had an aborted takeoff once. Man, this shouldn't have happened. Somebody should have gotten fired for this. We were taking off out of Atlanta, and we had to be a half a second from the back wheels lifting off, and all of a sudden they just cut the engine, the plane comes down and bounces, right? He pulls off into the grass. All right, this is on a 737, similar to the ones that keep dying, ripping apart. So we're in the grass by the runway. Okay, so we're in the grass by the runway, and the pilot comes over and says, "Yeah, we had an indicator light come off. We're going to check into it. Give us a few minutes." Well, we sit there for 4 or 5 minutes. We're on the grass with planes taking off just left of us, right? And so finally he says, "Okay, we think we got it figured out. We're going to give this another shot." he just gets back in line. So then we start taking off again, like at the exact same moment. One of the flight attendants comes over I assume it was the flight attendant, maybe it was the pilot, I don't know. Comes over the intercom screaming, like, cell phones off, cell phones off! And then we just took off uneventfully. You can't come over the intercom screaming like that. You know, people were like blessing their children, and I mean, it was awesome. And I also like, I was telling them earlier, I like when, you're on these smaller planes and they're making like major corrections like during landing, and you're on the runway already. And like, you should not be turning the wheel that far when we're 3 feet from the ground. Oh, I love it. Just waiting for that wing to like you see it grind into the grass over there. So good. Yeah. None of you were like this? I'm all about the stories. I have to lose a couple limbs or something, so be it. I got tremors in my left arm anyways. That would be a good one to lose. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of airports out there. So maybe our first step is, it would be nice if we can have a list view in our app showing every single airport that is in our app, or every single airport that's in the world. Make sense? All right, so let's assume that there are 17,000 plus airports. How are we going to get these into our app?
Pull from a website.
Okay, pull from a website. So we got to do some screen scraping or something like that, right? Because we don't want to sit there and hand enter in 17,678 of these guys. Okay, so what we're going to do, we'll take like a 15, 20-second break, and then we'll come back and we have I'll have to locate it, but we're going to look for a list of all airports somewhere on the, with airport code and then name of city or whatever.
You can do that with the U.S. FAA will give you a list of all airports.
Well, we're going to see if we can do better than that.
But I was going to say, I don't know what you're going to do for the rest of it.
We'll figure it out. It's going to be awesome. In the worst case, we'll do just U.S., but we'll figure out a good way of doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up our database with those things. So actually, we're not going to write that. We don't want our app necessarily screen scraping for that data every single time it launches, if presumably airport names don't change that often, right? So we're going to go ahead and get it once and get it loaded into the database just to get it in there to save ourselves. So this is really weaponizing computer programming. We're saying, hey, I know how to program, so rather than sitting here and write 17,678 unique airport codes into the database, I'm going to go ahead and just write a little object that screen scrapes it, creates airport objects, saves them to Firebase under unique IDs. Make sense? All right, questions about any of that stuff before we take our break?
So like on our app, like really the credit card is just one part of this travel hacking app. So like, would it be something where we wanted to have like a main screen where we click on different parts that take you to, like, one's a credit card, one's like airport?
Oh, yeah. We're just kind of building a whole bunch of widgets, then we'll organize where they need to go later. All right, anything else?
Are we going to put in that fail-safe button for the delete buttons?
We can.
Eventually.
Yeah, we can do that real quick when we come back, if you want. Yeah, so let's take 5 minutes, and we'll throw a quick fail-safe button just to confirm you want to delete in. We'll put up an alert button, and then we'll do the airport thing. Sound good? All right, so take 5 minutes. Not too long.